Hopefully it won't be another 3 months before I post something. Yeah, about that. I need you to know that I did try to make another video. In fact, I have a video sitting in my computer waiting to be edited about Taylor Swift and the Marauders, and I just did not finish editing it. I filmed it in July, and then it felt weird to put out a video that I made several months ago because I made references to like the month that I was in. So I'm gonna maybe finish that eventually, but for now we're gonna talk about Achilles and Patroclus, and I need you to forgive me for any microphone issues because I just got a microphone and I don't know how to use it. I hope that it sounds okay. Today we're gonna be talking about the Iliad and just how gay is the Iliad. How gay are Achilles and Patroclus really when we look at the Iliad instead of something like the Song of Achilles? Let me grab the translation of the Iliad. The translation of the Iliad that I'm going to be looking at in this video is this translation by Stanley Lombardo. It's my favorite translation. I read a few different translations. I appreciate that it's in poetry format and not in prose. We're going to take a look and see how gay Patroclus and Achilles are. Specifically in this translation, it can change. Like, the language can change a little bit from translation to translation, but it shouldn't change too much. It's from the same base source. So the first time I made this video, like a year ago, I ended up just reading a bunch of quotes from the Iliad and talking about how they were gay, but I don't think that that is something I want to do this time. I kind of want to just talk more about the contents of those quotes, and I'll put them, like, from where in the Iliad on the screen, but I don't want to read these like 2-minute long quotes, like full pages of gay stuff. So I'm going to just talk about like the content of those quotes, not like the actual quote itself, but what it says. And I know that sometimes reading translated ancient text can be difficult. It's difficult to understand what they're actually trying to say. So we're going to just discuss that and talk about how it's actually really gay. All right, in the foreword of this by Sheila Murnaghan, in the foreword by Sheila, she says that there's no proof that they're gay. She brings up the fact that some people identify Achilles and Patroclus as homosexuals and says there's no actual proof of that. When I first read this, I was reading the introduction first because I'm a psycho, because I don't just skip to the actual part. I'll find the part, perhaps. Here it is. Yeah, so as you can see, that's me. This is what Sheila says. The relationship between Achilles and Patroclus involves both intense closeness. They are so close that later Greeks who idealized male homosexual relations assumed that they were lovers, although there is no indication of that in the Iliad. And I have written next to it, I beg to differ. Oh, really? A face that is supposed to be like the eyebrow raised emoji, because even before I read the Iliad, I thought that they were gay because I had read the Song of Achilles. So I was going into this with like the mindset that yes, they're gay. And I was looking for that as I was reading. Basically everything that I identified in the text and underlined and made extra comments about were in the context of Patroclus and Achilles being in a homosexual relationship. In terms of like the actual content of the Iliad, how gay were they? The first few examples that we have, because we don't really get much interaction between Patroclus and Achilles in the Iliad, we mostly see Achilles' reaction to Patroclus' death and other mentions of them being close. Patroclus is referred to as Achilles' beloved friend 6 different times in the entire Iliad, and I did verify that fact. It's 6 different times where Patroclus is referred to as a beloved friend, which, you know, friend. There's also the beloved companion, which was mentioned once, maybe more times. I didn't actually look at that one specifically. Patroclus is referred to as Achilles' beloved companion or friend, which isn't particularly gay, like especially the friend one kind of is implying that they're not actually in a relationship, but it does have some homosexual implications because I don't think you would call a regular friend your beloved companion. And it's not just Achilles referring to Patroclus saying, my beloved friend. It's the narrator calling Patroclus Achilles' beloved companion. We do have instances where Achilles and Patroclus interact in the books, and when they interact, Achilles does use some pet names for Patroclus. The Iliad, if you don't know, is set up into books. Books are basically, they're like chapters. In book 11, Achilles calls Patroclus my heart's companion, which, if you ask me, that's pretty gay. Besides the beloved companion and heart's companion and stuff like that. There are also other instances where Achilles, mainly Achilles, says things to Patroclus where it's like, I don't know if you would say that to like your bro, you know? Or your cousin, as that one movie, like, I forgot what the name of that movie is. The dumbest movie ever, but they say that Achilles and Patroclus were cousins, and that's not the case. It's not the case. They're not cousins. At one point, Achilles is like, hey, Patroclus, they're talking about the war, and they're talking about the sacrifices that need to be made, and Achilles is like, I wish that it could be just me and you here, alone, without anyone else, and we could take down Troy by ourselves. But you can see, it's like, oh, Patroclus, I wish to Father Zeus and Athena and Apollo, that all of them, Greeks and Trojans alike, every last man on Troy's dusty plain, were dead, and only you and I were left to rip Ilion down, stone by sacred stone. Ilion is Troy. That's what Troy is. Like, I could see that being like, I don't want to be in a war anymore kind of sentiment. It could be like, that could be straight. At this point, we're kind of like, okay, well, they're not totally gay. They could be gay, but like, it's not, the things that have been said are not exclusively homosexual things. That's really the extent of the homosexual interactions we get between Patroclus and Achilles before Patroclus dies. The rest of the interactions are more just like that Patroclus is there while Achilles is talking to someone else, or that Achilles is ordering Patroclus around, because Patroclus also acted as a servant to Achilles. It was not just a guy who hung around Achilles. Patroclus acted as a servant, and there were times when Patroclus was ordered around by Achilles and like would do whatever Achilles said. For example, when Achilles had to surrender Briareus, he said to Patroclus, go give Briareus to Agamemnon, and Patroclus was like, okay, and did it. There's more to the dynamic than just lovers, if it's the case that they were lovers. And if you remember, the way that Patroclus dies is that he puts on Achilles' armor and goes into battle so that the Greeks would have the force of Achilles' army to help them take down Troy, because the Greeks were losing very badly at that point, because Achilles had said that he's not going to fight anymore. So Patroclus goes into battle dressed as Achilles, in Achilles' armor, and fights, and dies. And the next few books of the Iliad, we see Achilles grieving and his rage of how much that hurt him. The moment when Achilles finds out that Patroclus has died, this guy, Anticlus, he's the messenger who comes and tells Achilles that Patroclus has died. And Achilles just starts wailing, and he's described as like pouring the dirt and dust from the ground onto his chest and head, and that he was like tearing his hair out with his hands. And then Anticlus, who was also crying, so this is how I interpret this passage. I'm gonna read it to you the way that it is in the Iliad, then I will tell you how I interpret it. So it says, Anticlus, sobbing himself, stayed with Achilles, and held up his hands. He was groaning from the depth of his soul for fear that he would lay open his own throat with steel. And so that is based on my interpretation of it. Basically, Anticlus felt the need to restrain Achilles because he was afraid that Achilles would hurt himself after finding out that Patroclus has died, which is a lot, you know, like you find out a loved one died. I feel like, I don't know, if you guys are here from my Marauders video, if you've read Just Lovers, that's kind of like James. It's kind of like James being like, yeah, I don't think I could live without Regulus. Like, if he drowned, I would drown as well. So, I mean, like, it's not a very platonic idea. And then, I know in the Song of Achilles, Thetis is a bad character, but in the Iliad, she is more of a motherly figure who just wants the best for Achilles. So, she doesn't have any particular problem with Patroclus. And she actually mentions Patroclus when Achilles is grieving, and Thetis says of Achilles that as long as he can see the sun, he will be in pain. And Achilles says, then he refers to Patroclus as his dearest friend. He says, Patroclus, my dearest friend, I loved him and I killed him. And then also says, a few lines later, that he doesn't have the will to live anymore, now that Patroclus is dead. And we can see the extent of Achilles' love for Patroclus, which is just what I'm gonna call it now, because I think at this point we've kind of seen the beloved companion, the beloved friend, to, is he gonna, like, hurt himself now that he found out that Patroclus is dead? He doesn't have the will to live anymore now that Patroclus, his best friend, servant, is dead. That totally makes sense. That's totally rational. I think that, I mean, Achilles is not a completely rational person, but I think that at this point we can say that it's very close to love. Achilles also talks about revenge on Patroclus, getting revenge by killing Hector, who killed Patroclus. And he says that he's going to get revenge on the person who killed his beloved, referring to Patroclus as his beloved again. And when we see Achilles grieving with the rest of the Greeks, he's very, very dramatic. It's said that he groans like a bearded lion and would like lay his hands on Patroclus's chest and lament his death. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, like, you know, I've never had a best friend die or a lover die, so I can't really say, yes, specifically this is the difference and how it feels. But just like from general, like, reading the room, it doesn't really seem heterosexual. This relationship doesn't really seem heterosexual. There's a time when it's said when Thetis comes to give Achilles his new armor, because when Patroclus died, the armor that Patroclus was wearing was captured by the Trojans, so Achilles doesn't have any armor anymore. So his mother brings him more armor, and when she does that, she notices that Achilles is laying next to the corpse of Patroclus, wailing, like laying on it. We also have to talk about the fact that Achilles doesn't eat or drink after Patroclus dies. The Greek elders, the Greek leaders are like, hey Achilles, maybe you should eat something. Maybe you should eat something. That may help. And Achilles is like, no, how can I eat? There's no joy in the world anymore. The descriptions of Achilles in mourning continue with descriptions of Achilles' heart aching until Achilles himself died in battle. And also the depictions of Achilles mourning, we see him tell Patroclus' corpse that even if his own father had died, he would not feel the same type of grief that he feels with the death of Patroclus, which is a big deal. That's a big deal. That's it's like Achilles saying, you're the most important person in my life. The pain I feel from you dying will compare to nothing in this whole world, and I will not be at peace until I myself die. And then when Achilles addresses Hector in the battle, before he gets his revenge for the death of Patroclus, he talks to Hector a little bit and says, here he is, the man who reamed my heart. Which is like, you know, that's a lot. Reamed your heart. Here's the man who reamed my heart. Like, implying that Patroclus was his heart. That is very homosexual. You can have your own interpretations, but the fact that Achilles was like, you reamed my heart to Hector, who killed Patroclus, is very telling to me. There are other things that come up in this, like, monologue where he's talking to Hector that make it like, oh, okay, Achilles is really insane. Achilles is, like, really not mentally stable. So at this point, Achilles has Hector basically almost dead. He's about to kill Hector. And he says to him that Achilles is gonna leave Hector's body out for the dogs and birds to rip his intestines out. And then Hector's like, wait, no, please don't do that. Like, please give my body back to my family at least. Imagine how it would feel like for your parents to not get back your body once you're dead.
No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
And Achilles' response to this is, don't whine to me about my parents. You dog, I wish my stomach would let me cut off your flesh in strips and eat it raw for what you've done to me. There is no one and no way to keep the dogs off your head. So Achilles is like a lot of it insane. That's that passage. He says, Hector, for what you've done to me, I wish that my stomach would allow me to cut off your flesh and eat it raw, because what you've done to me is such a heinous act that is what you deserve. You killing Patroclus means that you deserve to be mutilated by dogs and by birds and by myself if I had the stomach for it. And once Achilles kills Hector, he has a thought, because he's kind of like happy about his victory or whatever, and he's like, oh no, I have to go back to the ships, like Patroclus's body is still there, I need to bury it. And then he says, let me read you this quote. He says, as long as I am among the living, until I rise no more, even if in Hades the dead do not remember, even there I will remember you, my dear friend. So, what that means is, even if, when you die, you forget everything that happened in your life, even if that happens, I will still remember and mourn for my friend Patroclus, which is a lot. It's a lot, guys. This is all just a lot. And then when he gets back to camp, the Greeks are like, hey, Achilles, you're covered in blood and guts. Please go take a bath. And Achilles is like, no, how dare you? How dare you? but he's also like, I'll never grieve like this again, and I'm not gonna wash myself, I'm not gonna take a shower, I'm not gonna take a bath, I'm not gonna wash the blood of Hector off my body until Patroclus is buried. So, I don't know. No, guys, I think that's just really straight. That's really straight of him. Achilles cut off his own hair at Patroclus's funeral, and then put his hair in Patroclus's arms while he's on the pyre. Basically the way that the Greeks buried people was to burn them, and he put his hair that he just cut off into Patroclus's hands. He's like, here, have this. And at this point, he's already decided that he's going to die. I can't remember if in the Iliad he knows that he's not going to make it back, as he does in the Song of Achilles, but at this point he's like, I'm not gonna go back to Greece. I'm not going back to Greece. So I'm gonna die here. My sister's outside my window.
So I wouldn't disturb you, bro.
Bro?
I wrote on a freaking sign and went outside your window. If you read it.
I read it! Okay. I couldn't read that part.
Read it.
I read it! I don't know if you guys know my sister, Amalia. Shout out to her, she's great. So, getting back into it, as Patroclus is being burned on this pyre, Achilles walks around, I imagine, like, the really cartoonish, like, just, like, mopey, like, dragging his feet kind of thing. Just, like, groaning, and yeah, that's it. That's all it says. Achilles wailed for his friend as he burned his bones, moving slowly around the pyre, groaning heavily. Ugh, bro. So, Patroclus is having his funeral. Well, Achilles is having Patroclus's funeral, I guess, because Patroclus is already dead. And eventually they have some funeral games, which don't have that much impact on the story, like, to be honest, at all. But after the games, there's a description of all the other soldiers returning back to their own tents and going to sleep. But Achilles could not go to sleep. I'm gonna perhaps read this one. So, just the first, actually. He tossed and turned, yearning for Patroclus, for his manhood and his noble heart. Hang on, guys. I need you to listen very carefully. Achilles was yearning for Patroclus's manhood. Do you know what that implies? Do you know what that implies? Please tell me you know what it implies. It implies that he was yearning for his dick. So besides that, we have more of Achilles being certified insane, because after he has this sleepless night, he cannot sleep. He goes and wanders on the beach, and then he decides to hook the body of Hector up to his chariot and drive around. So he's defiling Hector's body, dragging it in the dirt, which is, guys, I need you to understand how important burial was to the Greeks and to the Trojans, I'm assuming, as well, at the time, because they believed if you didn't have a proper burial, you could not go to the underworld. You could not achieve Elysium. Basically, if no funeral, you have no afterlife. And the corpse is a very respected thing. It's very, you respect the body, you give the body of the dead back to the people whose side is from. So, like, if a Trojan kills a Greek and then, like, has the Greek on their line because they're getting the weapons are fine. You can steal the weapons of your dead Greek enemy, but you cannot steal the body. You return the body. So, and Achilles was dragging the body of Hector behind his chariot through the dirt, which is insane. It's really also insulting to Hector and just, like, treating him like a piece of shit. He would drag Hector's body around the place where Patroclus was burned, where his ashes still remained, 3 times. That's specified. And then he would leave Hector laying face down in the dirt and then go back to his hut and try to sleep. Although, we do know that Hector's body is fine because Apollo was a fan of the Trojans and a fan of Hector in general, and he actually preserved Hector's body so that it wasn't damaged. That's the end of the quotes that I actually have written down here, but we also have instances of Achilles treating Patroclus poorly, or Patroclus and Achilles going to bed with women. That's specifically mentioned a few times, where it's like Patroclus went to sleep on one side of the tent with one woman, and Achilles went to sleep on the other side of the tent with another woman. Although they did share a tent. Like, that's very important information. information. There's a discussion of Achilles with other women, and also description that once the news of Patroclus' death has broken out, like is public knowledge in the Greek camp, that the women who Achilles and Patroclus had captured were running around and beating their chests. There's women involved in the story. Just like the whole premise of the Iliad is that Achilles had to give away his war prize, a woman, his favorite war prize. There are times that Achilles mistreats Patroclus. He says, he's like, at one point Patroclus is crying. Achilles is like, Patroclus, why are you crying? You look like a little girl crying for her mother. Stop that. It's a little bit like unexpected, but it does happen in book 16. Actually, 16 lines 6 through 11, which I have put on the screen already. I'm presuming you know. And if you guys don't know, which I'm assuming you do, Achilles gets killed by Paris, probably the most twink person ever who is somehow straight. No, like, I have no idea what's going on there. Another thing that happens before Patroclus gets buried is that Patroclus, the ghost of Patroclus, visits Achilles in his sleep and says, hey, please bury me, but don't bury me by myself. Bury me with you. So if you're wondering about that part of Song of Achilles, that is accurate. It's said in the Iliad. I can read you the lines if you would like. It says, and one more thing, Achilles, do not lay my bones apart from yours, but lie them together, just as we were reared together in your house. So let one coffer enfold the bones of us both, the two-handled gold one your mother gave you. Patroclus is like, hey guys, hey Achilles, bury us together and also use this one very specific coffin, please. Thanks. And then Achilles responds, and Achilles responds by saying, why have you come here, dear heart? Again, implying that his heart is Patroclus. I promise you, I will do everything you ask, but come closer. Let us give in to grief, however briefly, in each other's arms. So that's Achilles being gay. That's all the evidence that I've gathered for Achilles and Patroclus being gay in the Iliad. There may have been more. I may have missed some stuff. And other instances of Achilles mistreating Patroclus in other ways. I didn't write all those down because at the time when I was researching for this video originally, I was like, I'm making a case for them being gay. But now I want it to be more of a discussion if they were actually gay. So we actually have fragments of a play by Achilles that was destroyed. Most of it's destroyed, but we have fragments of it, and it's a play called Myrmidons. In Myrmidons, in these fragments that we have, it's heavily implied that Achilles and Patroclus were lovers. And now this is after Homer's time, like way after. It's not even really implications because it's fragments saying that Achilles is like, why would you die? Like, were you not happy with the kisses I put on your thighs? It's very gay, very gay. What we can see here from all these sections of the Iliad is maybe they were gay, probably they were gay, just from my own observations. And that's another thing, is that the way a queer person will read this versus the way a straight person will read this is very different. And I read this specifically looking for instances of Achilles and Patroclus being gay. It's really up to interpretation. And it also depends on the translator. Whoever translated it could have different interpretations of what the Greek words actually meant or actually said, what they implied about the nature of the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I actually had a great time recording it. It was far less stressful than last time. And I hope that I can make more videos soon. My New Year's resolution is actually to make one video per week in 2024. So we'll see if that happens. If that happens, well, this will be out by Sunday or Monday, and today is Wednesday. So we'll see. That is my goal, and I'm going to try to achieve it. I was thinking about doing a video about why Snape is bad, but then I was like, oh, that will take so long. That would take so long because I have to go in and do research. I can't just be like, Snape is bad because his vibes are off. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I love you. I would love to make videos like this more often, and the only way I can do that is if you like and subscribe. So I would be eternally grateful if you liked and subscribed and shared this video with all your friends. Love you. Bye-bye. Bye.